Hey, Max. Do you think that there is a huge gap between project managers and developers? From my experience, managers don't know how games are made, so communication between those two areas are quite hard.
Yeah, I know what they're saying. I agree. They can be. I've worked with lots of producers, especially in publishing side as well, because producers in publishing side don't have to necessarily make games. But and this isn't for everyone. I'm generalizing here, but generally, I have found that a lot of producers they can't be good at everything. They're good at being producers. They're good at organizing people, driving up the right talent. There's a lot of producing is really tough. It's a lot of work, but it's not necessarily building a game. So there is a definite disconnect between the two, especially as I find that people who get into production, they do that quite early. They don't necessarily build games and are a programmer and go into being a producer. There are people who do, but generally I find that people go straight into production. So yes, there's a disconnect. And I find the best way to kind of bridge that gap is by having people like supervisors, tech artists, art directors involved in the conversation, because a lot of those guys have a kind of mix between, like a supervisor is a kind of mix between producer, artist, if you like, and they're really useful because they can tell you all the things that's kind of not on brief with the artwork that you've completed, but they also know what's going on with the whole project, and so they can see everything. So they should be involved in the communication and conversation. I can't quite remember the question though. What was it, Indy? Do you want to do the little magic thing?
Huge gap between project managers and developers.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, so I think involving those people really helps. The other thing is to make sure that you're actually sitting down having those conversations. So earlier on, I mentioned MLC Union that we did in Devon in the UK. One of the workshops that we ran was having people who don't normally talk to each other, or people who talk to each other but never really talk about their role, sit down and actually do so. And we found really interesting things came out of that. So we'd have like a 3D modeler and a producer talking to each other and like saying, what are their friction points? Like what's slowing them down? What feedback can they give each other for improvements, or what's going well? That communication just solves everything. Communication in any sort of human interaction, no matter what it is always a good idea. So I
Yeah.
think if you find that your producers or you find your artists aren't getting something, one the other way, have those conversations about like where's these friction points? Where can we improve? Because they don't need to know about games producers. They don't need it. It's the job of the developer to know about how to build the game, not the producer. But the producer must trust the developer. That's really important.